Well, here I am at long last. I have to say, it took a lot longer than I would have expected, and it's not entirely what I wanted. I had always thought I deserved a more prestigious command. However, due to a few, let's just call them incidents, some minor, more major, I have landed here, at good old Dutch Harbor, Alaska. The site of this harbor rivals that of the Rocky Mountains, or any other North American wonder. No, I'm just kidding. This dreary and damn cold place is not my idea of paradise. Neither is the dangerous waters that are constantly trying to kill you. The same waters that I will be patrolling in my brand new command. USS S-33, SS-138. This boat was laid down on June 14th, 1918, and commissioned on April 18th, 1922. Needless to say, she is very old and in rather bad shape, especially when compared to the new shiny fleet-type submarines that are rolling off the lines. These pig boats are known for routine mechanical failures, something that I expect we'll have plenty of, considering the brutal conditions we will be facing, and that's not even taking into account that there's a war on. Japanese submarines seem to infest these waters, however, besides that, there's not a whole lot going on up here. I expect it'll stay that way until the war is over. What would anyone want with these miserable little islands like Attu? Final preparations were made, and we were all set to shove off for a short and sweet shakedown patrol. On April 18th, 12 Mark 10 torpedoes were loaded up, and food supplies were carried on board. The crew was rather eager to get underway, and I have to admit, so was I. Despite my reservations with this command, it had been too long since I stood on the conning tower of a submarine. At 0600 hours on April 20th, 1942, S-33 slipped away from her subtender to commence her shakedown patrol. Besides the 12 Mark 10 torpedoes, S-33 also had a 4-inch deck gun mounted on the bow. This should come in handy just in case we need to finish off an enemy merchant ship or we come across some fishing junks. For anti-aircraft defense, we have a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on the conning tower. I have to admit, I'm not very excited to find out just how effective this will be against a Japanese aircraft. Our first response to an enemy aircraft will be to dive the boat. Even that is not as easy as it sounds. Thankfully, there is one piece of equipment that will really help us out when it comes to our airborne nemesis, SD Air Search Radar. This T-shaped post mounted on the conning tower has a maximum range of around 26,000 yards. This piece of equipment will be a lifesaver, just as long as there is no malfunctions. By 1400 hours, the boat had cleared Dutch Harbor and was on a heading of 195 degrees, heading straight out to the patrol area. Our destination was just over 500 nautical miles away. Once we arrived there, we would begin shakedown drills to work out all of the kinks with the boat. At a standard speed of 9 knots, we would be on station in 54 hours. The plan was to stay in the patrol area for 3 days and then head back to Dutch. Short and sweet. Let's hope nothing goes wrong.
U.S. Army Colonel James H. Doolittle has led 16 B-25 bombers from the carrier Hornet in the first ever air raid on Japan. They took off about 750 miles east of the Japanese capital, Tokyo. The escort fighters were provided by the fighter wing of the carrier Enterprise. Bombs were dropped on the main enemy cities of Tokyo, Kobe, Yokohama, Nagoya, and Yokosuka. Only one aircraft was damaged during the raid, although all 16 planes were lost when they crash-landed in China. This daring raid was a welcome morale boost for our nation, and it proved that the Japanese mainland is within our armed forces' reach.
On April 23rd at around midnight, we arrived at our patrol area. The transit to this area was not too bad. Everything was running smoothly, aside from just a few issues that were discovered. The only major issue was our night periscope refused to raise. Besides that, every other malfunction was minor. The weather en route to this area was quite pleasant. However, upon arriving, things changed for the worse. Wind speeds are very high, well over 40 feet per second, and massive swells are tossing the boat around like a rag doll. Despite her age, the boat seemed able to handle it. We would ride out the storm until dawn, then we would begin our drills. We had survived the battering overnight, and now it was time to dive. Our first dive would be at 0800 hours. First, we would go to periscope depth and down deeper, if the boat would allow it. Every S-boat is different. Some are in remarkable shape for their age, and others not so much. I would say ours here is somewhere in the middle. Not great, not terrible. The order to dive was given. The bow planes were rigged for dive. The dive to periscope depth just took over 50 seconds to complete. The boat showed no serious sign of strain at this depth. We would take her deeper. The recommended test depth for a brand new S-boat was 200 feet. Generally, the shipyards are pretty conservative with the test depth number. However, this boat was 20 years old and rusted to hell. I was not going to push our luck. Our next step would be 100 feet. The riveted hull began to creak and groan as the boat got closer and closer to the ordered depth. A 100 feet, we had made it. The boat is leaking like a faucet, but we have arrived. So far, so good. Let's push it further, down to 150. We arrived at 150 feet. The boat seemed to handle it rather well, all things considered. I have to say, the crew started working up quite the sweat, and so did I. We would save 200 feet and beyond for combat conditions. What depth this boat can actually go to is a guessing game, really. There's no way of knowing. At 0840, the boat was ordered to surface. For the next 3 days, we would continue to drill to get that dive time down. We would also work on torpedo drills constantly. This boat and crew would be a well-oiled machine by the end of this shakedown. On April 26, just an hour after midnight, we received a radio message from Comm Subpack. We were ordered to continue our shakedown patrol for 3 more days. In this message, we were also cleared to engage any Japanese ships we may find in the area. The new patrol area was 200 nautical miles to the southeast. We would arrive in about 30 hours. The weather continues to batter S-33. Hopefully that will clear up soon. Every crewman at this point has some sort of injury after being tossed about for so long. Early in the morning, the weather cleared up, thank goodness. It seems we have sailed out of the squall. I was hopeful that we would come across some Japanese ships or submarines out here. It was rather wishful thinking. Nothing has been seen or heard. It seems like we are all alone. Nevertheless, the drills continue. Radio traffic has indicated that something big is going down in the Coral Sea. We received this message from Subpack. Be advised, major Japanese naval contingent sighted and converging on Coral Sea area. All nearby patrol vessels requested to take appropriate measures. That means blow them out of the water. After completing our second objective, we were ordered to return back home to Dutch Harbor. I have to admit, I was a bit disappointed at this point that nothing had been sighted during our shakedown patrol. However, the crew did exceptionally well, and we did our job. I'm sure we will be able to take the fight to the enemy in our next patrol. An exciting radio report had just come in. Enemy warship, heading north, speed around 7 knots. This enemy was 400 nautical miles away from us, however, it was sailing straight towards our position. An intercept was very possible. We would attempt to track it down. Who knows what this enemy ship could be? A destroyer? A submarine? Something bigger? It doesn't matter. I saw this as a great opportunity to prove the combat ability of the crew and S-33. We would attack. We are in position. If the intercept point was accurate, we should be close to the enemy warship. The hydrophone operator continued his sweeps. Nothing. Minutes pass, and suddenly he calls out a contact. Warship bearing 313 degrees, closing. This is it. Battle stations.
General quarters, all hands man your battle stations, all hands man your battle stations.
S-33 closed in on the sound contact and raised our attack periscope. There she is, a Japanese submarine. At the moment, we are in no position to fire. We will have to re-intercept to get at a better angle to fire our fish. We will break contact and surface. We submerged once again. This time my hydrophone operator, Thomas Coyle, picked up the enemy sub immediately. We were in a near perfect position. S-33 was crawling on her electric motors just below the surface as the enemy sub continued to close. Everything was looking good. Plot showed the target moving at a speed of 7 knots, just as the radio report had indicated. Minutes had passed and we were ready to fire. The target AOB was 80 degrees to starboard, speed 7 knots, and just 1,500 yards away. I gave the order to open tubes 1 through 4. Fire. The 4 fish were away, running hot straight and normal towards the target. The hydrophone operator kept track of the torpedoes. A near-perfect attack. 3 torpedoes smacked right into the hull of the enemy submarine, with just 1 missing. 3 was all she needed though. The sub had it. She was going down. A 2,000-ton Type B submarine was sunk. After the exciting attack, we turned north to head home. The weather started to pick up once again, but nothing could dampen our spirits. The crew was ecstatic after our first victory, and it will certainly not be our last.
past 2 days, the U.S. Navy has managed to bring the Imperial Japanese Navy to a standstill in what is now known as the Battle of the Coral Sea. Task Force 17, including carriers Yorktown and Lexington, 8 cruisers and 11 destroyers under the command of Admiral Fletcher, intercepted a Japanese strike force covering a naval invasion force headed for Port Moresby, capital of Papua New Guinea. The U.S. Navy sunk the light carrier Shoho and damaged the fleet carrier Shukaku and 2 enemy cruisers at the cost of the oil tanker Nyosho and a destroyer sunk. The Japanese Admiral Inouye was forced to postpone the planned invasion of Port Moresby.
As S-33 neared the Alaskan coast, the weather cleared up significantly. The boat arrived at Dutch Harbor on May 12, 1942, bringing an end to her shakedown patrol. Well, everybody, that will do it for today's episode. I really hope you all enjoyed it, and I think this is a great way to kick off a new Silent Hunter series. I certainly enjoy making these types of cinematic videos, even though they are quite a bit of work. I hope you all liked it. Let me know what you all thought about it. Because this is the first video of a brand new series, leaving a like and commenting on the video really does wonders to help out the channel and the video, so I would appreciate it if you would do that. But that's all I have for today. Thank you all for watching as always. This is Wolfpack345 signing off, and I will see you all on the next one.